This is part 2 of one trade every NBA team should make. Part 1 was going over the Eastern Conference. This is going over the Western Conference. So if you have not checked out part 1 already, that is the most recent video on the channel, and it's going to be linked in the description and the pinned comment, unless I forget, which I do half of the time. But with that out of the way, not too much to say here, just talking about trades, so roll the intro. Real quick before I continue on with this video, about half of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed, so if you fall into that 50%, then subscribe. Also drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. Also, I don't really have anything to promote right now other than it's been a long time since I've promoted my second channel, so if you are not subscribed to my second channel already, I am doing post-game reactions as well as hot take videos, so if you're not subscribed over there, go do that. There should be a hot takes video that goes out relatively soon after this video goes up. But with that out of the way, let's get into these trades. So for the first one, the Utah Jazz receive nothing because I literally could not think of any way to improve this roster outside of this team landing a superstar, and there really wasn't any avenue for them to do that. So I don't have any improvement for this team. Their bench depth is great, their defense is great, their shooting is great, their scoring is great, their playmaking is great. There's really nothing to address. So for now, there's no trade for the Utah Jazz. I think they should just stay the course with no adjustment. The Phoenix Suns receive Matisse Thybulle. The Sixers receive Langston Galloway and 3 second-round picks. So the reason why I thought Matisse Thybulle for this team is that defensively, even though they're like the 3rd ranked defense in the league, their backup, like their bench defensive depth is not good. They do have good depth, but it's mostly like offensive talents. Dario Saric, Cameron Payne, I think Cam Johnson's coming off of the bench. If it's not him, it's Jay Crowder, who's a good defender, but they kind of flip between those. Frank Kaminsky, not a lot of defensive guys off of that bench, and this would be a way to get that. Also, Matisse Thybulle is relatively young and he's cheap. So, you know, he could be a longer term defensive forward for you. As for why the Sixers would potentially be doing this trade, well, Matisse is having a really bad sophomore season, and the potential that I originally thought he had, I'm starting to be like, I'm pretty sure Matisse is just going to be a pretty good role player throughout his career. And Langston Galloway is a relatively, like, not old shooting guard who is a very good 3-point shooter. So that just adds more shooting depth to the Sixers, and they get a couple of second-round picks that they can play with. So I don't think that's a bad return from Matisse Thybulle, and the Suns would get some depth defensively, and it'd further improve their already great defense. The Lakers receive Norman Powell. The Raptors receive Kyle Kuzma, Wesley Matthews, and Talen Horton-Tucker. Now, I can already tell the Lakers fans are going to be mad about the fact that they're moving on from Horton-Tucker because they love that guy, and even Kuzma has been better this year, and Wesley Matthews has been pretty solid. So I could see an argument where, hey, the Lakers are giving up 3 players that can solidly be in the rotation for 1 player who is better than all of them, but maybe doesn't contribute as much as 3 players would. But Norman Powell is a player that is a very efficient 18 points per game. I think last I checked, he had like a 64% true shooting percentage. He shoots 40+% from 3 on 6 attempts per game. He does have some consistency issues, and his defense can be hit or miss depending on the day, which I guess is more consistency issues, but he is definitely a reliable 3-point shooter, overall scorer, a guy who can run the break, and I think that would further add to the offensive talent of this team. New lineup would be probably Dennis Schroeder, Norman Powell, LeBron, AD, whoever they have at center. I think it's Marc Gasol, but their best lineup would probably be Schroeder, Powell, KCP, LeBron, and Anthony Davis, with LeBron at small ball 4, AD at 5, and all that. So that adds some more offensive punch to this team. One concern would be that Norman Powell has a player option after this year, and being that the talent that he is, he's probably going to get more than 11 million, so he'll probably decline that. But I don't know if they get the bird rights here or not, so they might be able to bring him back. But either way, I think this could be a worthwhile swap. As for why Toronto does it, Talen is young, and I don't think he's as good as Lakers fans think he is, but I do think he can be pretty solid. Kyle Kuzma is whatever. Wesley Matthews is whatever, but the reason why the Raptors do this is the potential of Norman Powell leaving. So you're getting back a young player with some upside and 2 guys that can be rotation players who will be all right. So yeah, that's their side of things. The Clippers receive Ricky Rubio. The Timberwolves receive The Clippers receive Ricky Rubio. The Timberwolves receive Patrick Beverley, Patrick Patterson, and a name that I'm not going to attempt to pronounce. So this is a move where the Clippers get playmaking. The one issue that I have with this move is that if I'm getting an ideal point guard with the Clippers, it would be a point guard who can space the floor when he isn't playmaking. And while Ricky Rubio has improved as a shooter, he's still not a good one. So that's the one thing that's like, maybe I'd just rather have Beverley. But playmaking has been an issue for this Clippers team that is well documented, and he could be the solution to this. As for why the Timberwolves would do this, well, the Ricky Rubio has not been very good for them this year, and Patrick Beverley would bring defense. And even though Ricky Rubio is also a good defender, I think Beverley is a little bit better of one, and it can also be a player who's more focused on the defensive end. And I also feel like there's too many ball handlers in Minnesota as it is, so that could kind of break that up a little bit. I don't think this is the best trade available for the Timberwolves for Ricky Rubio, but it's far from the worst either. And I definitely think, maybe throw some second-round picks in this one, and the Timberwolves would be interested. The Blazers receive Ish Smith and Thomas Bryant. The Wizards receive Derrick Jones Jr. and salary filler. So the one big thing here is that Thomas Bryant, I think, isn't really going to play till the end of the season. And by then, Jusuf Nurkic is going to be back. So he is going to be a backup center, but I am a big fan of Thomas Bryant for the offense that he brings. Ish Smith also finally gives the Blazers like a really good backup point guard. Nice as Anthony Simons is as a three-point shooter, he's not really like a big-time ball handler. His skill is like a little bit lacking, and I'd rather just have the veteran guy in there and Ish Smith, who I know is going to bring me playmaking, defense, and he has that pull-up mid-range shot. But I could very easily and very understandably see the Blazers not doing this trade because Derrick Jones Jr. has been really good for the Blazers this year. I just will say that the Blazers defense has not been good despite the fact that he is a defensive specialist, so maybe you question his impact a little bit there. Granted, a lot of that is also Terry Stotts, so I could definitely see why Blazers fans wouldn't want to do this one, but I think, you get a very good backup five, a good backup point guard in exchange for just swapping out Derrick Jones. I could see that being a better move for the Blazers, but I could also see them being like, nah, we're just going to hold on to Derrick Jones. The Nuggets receive PJ Tucker, Daniel House, and Ben McLemore. The Rockets receive Will Barton and a couple of second-round picks, maybe even a protected first-round pick. So this move is obviously adding depth to the Nuggets. You get PJ, who can shoot and play defense, Daniel House, who can shoot and play defense, and Ben McLemore, who can shoot and not play defense. But the Nuggets, ironically, are kind of lacking in depth in comparison to what they have been the past couple of years, and it's kind of annoying me because it feels like the system in Denver is still catering to a team that is very deep, and they're not very deep anymore, and that's part of the reason why they're struggling so much. But regardless, this is going to add depth to Denver, and it's only exchanged for Will Barton, who is the best player in this trade. However, you are trading one body for three who can all be big-time rotation players, and I think it's worth it. Potential of moving a first-round pick, the reason why the Rockets would want that is you're giving them salary, so that could be an issue for them, but you could also probably flip Will Barton for a pick later on yourself, so maybe they would just be cool with that as an asset. But yeah, I definitely like the idea of getting the Nuggets some more depth, especially defensive depth with PJ Tucker. This is another combo trade between the San Antonio Spurs and New Orleans Pelicans. The Spurs receive Steven Adams, and the Pelicans receive LaMarcus Aldridge. Now, though he is having a down season, I think it's pretty fair to say LaMarcus Aldridge is still better than Steven Adams. However, the reason why this is just a straight-up swap is that Steven Adams is on a continuous contract for the next couple of years, and LaMarcus Aldridge's contract is expiring. Now, LaMarcus could very well just leave the Pelicans after this year, and while that would be a little disappointing, they would free about $16 million in cap space doing so. Meanwhile, the Spurs would get a solid long-term center that they can hold on to in place of a player who is likely going to leave in free agency anyways, so you're going to actually get a really reliable long-term player on a decent contract after this year's contract is over, in exchange for a guy who is going to leave anyway. So I think the Spurs get back a decent return for LaMarcus, who's also not been great for them this year. And in the Pelicans, this would be an opportunity to get a center who can space the floor and see how that pairs with Zion. I don't think that's going to be a long-term thing because obviously LaMarcus is very old and there's a very good chance he leaves, but it'll at least give you an idea of what a team with a 5 who spaces the floor next to Zion could look like offensively. The Dallas Mavericks received Devontae Graham, and the Charlotte Hornets received Josh Green. So this is a move where the Mavericks are buying low on Devontae Graham. If you not remember last year, Graham averaged like 18 and 8 on a little bit below league average efficiency, but it wasn't horrible, and he was a very good three-point shooter. Not great percentage, but very high volume, multiple off the dribble. So very good three-point shooter, very good playmaker. This year he has sucked butt. But if he is going to bounce back from that, getting him pretty low on just Josh Green, who is an intriguing young 3-and-D prospect for the Mavericks, but also, like, you know, you could rather have a point guard who is going to either be a 6-man and be a playmaker and shooter, or a guy who pairs well next to Luka and allows Luka to play off ball more. But it's an opportunity to buy low, and I think it's a shot worth taking, even though Josh Green could potentially, like, end up being a better player if Devontae just completely fell off a cliff. That's why the Hornets do this. Well, with Terry Rozier breaking out, LaMelo Ball being who he is, Josh Green as a 3-and-D prospect, he can definitely be a long-term guy, whereas with Devontae Graham, I question if he can really be there long-term. The Golden State Warriors received Nikola Vucevic and JaMychal Green. The Orlando Magic received James Wiseman, Kevon Looney, and Paul Millsap. The Nuggets receive Kelly Oubre. So a couple things here. First of all, the Warriors are moving James Wiseman in exchange for Nikola Vucevic. This is very clearly a move where you're like, even though James Wiseman has a lot of potential, we're just going to take the guaranteed guy in Nikola Vucevic right out of the gate. As for why the Magic would trade Vuce, I mean, there's already rumors of them trading them. They're like the second worst team in the conference right now. Vucevic is really good, but he's also like 30-something, and you're getting a very good, like just the top 3 pick prospect, your number 2 pick, in exchange for an older center, even though he's very good right now. For the Nuggets side of things, I could very well see them not wanting to do this trade because Paul Millsap and JaMychal Green combined is probably about as impactful as Kelly Oubre, if not more. But Kelly Oubre is younger than Paul Millsap, and I think a little bit younger than JaMychal Green as well. So if you want to be like, we're going to get a more longer term starter guy here, then that is a way to do that for relatively cheap, being that even though they're good, JaMychal Green and Paul Millsap aren't really that valuable as assets. But I could definitely see them being like, we'd rather just stick to our guns on this one. But for the Warriors, you're getting JaMychal Green, who is a very good floor spacer, who's also a defensive player, and then you're getting Vucevic, who can be a scorer and take some of the pressure off of Steph, because I'm tired of watching these Warriors games, and it's just so much pressure on Steph. And then even when Klay Thompson comes back, I mean, your starting lineup is Steph, Klay, I assume Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, and Vucevic, who's also a 5 who can space the floor, which with how poor some of their spacing is at times, with Wiggins being a struggle and Draymond Green being basically a non-shooter at this time, that would definitely help. So I think this is a very good trade for the Warriors, even though you're sacrificing a longer-term player. But because you have Steph right now at like age 33, I'd rather just get the most out of Steph that you have, and rather than focusing on a player who is going to matter more 8 years from now, not right now. But I could definitely also see some Warriors fans being like, nah, let's give James Wiseman a chance. But I would personally just go in the direction of win now and just cash in on your assets. The Memphis Grizzlies receive Norman Powell, and the Raptors receive Dillon Brooks and either Xavier Tillman or multiple second-round picks. So Xavier is pretty good for the Memphis Grizzlies. He's a pretty surprising player, and I know that Grizzlies fans very much like him. I still think he's just going to be a role player. And also, they have 2 bigs already in Jaren Jackson, as well as, why is his name escaping me right now? Brandon Clark. I don't know how much room there is going to be for Tillman to be like a really big player on this team, so you could view him as like, we're getting back a shooting guard who could very well be a long-term guy next to Ja Morant in exchange for him as an asset. Of course, Dillon Brooks, very inconsistent. Not that great in my opinion, and Norman Powell is considerably better, and you're sacrificing Tillman for that upgrade. Or if the Raptors would be down a couple of second-round picks, this is once again a trade where the Raptors are just getting something out of Norman Powell. I definitely think I'd rather take the Lakers trade from their point of view, but this is also not a horrible one. Dillon Brooks can kind of do what Norman Powell does, just on worse efficiency. And then you're getting back Tillman, who is interesting, or second-round picks to play with. But I very much like the fit of Norman Powell next to Ja Morant, because he's a very good three-point shooter and a decent scorer, a decent defensive player. So that would be cool for the Memphis Grizzlies to land that. The OKC Thunder receive Gary Harris, and the Nuggets receive Trevor Ariza, Darius Miller, and a protected first-round pick. So this is a trade where the Nuggets get rid of Gary Harris's contract. Both of Darius Miller and Trevor Ariza's contracts are expiring, so you're clearing about $20 million in cap space. In exchange, you're giving a first-round pick that I would do like probably top 20 protected just because of their playoff seeding right now. But assuming they get more up into the Western Conference, that's a first-round pick that the Thunder would definitely be able to cash in on. And of course, Sam Presti loves his first-round picks. You're managing to turn two expirings into a longer-term contract for a first. It's a classic move that rebuilding teams do. And also, Trevor Ariza could semi-do what Gary Harris does. He's obviously a lot older, but I'd rather have the cap space and then a player who's all right at doing what Gary Harris already does. The Sacramento Kings receive a Celtics first plus Grant Williams, maybe even 2 first-round picks, and the Celtics receive Harrison Barnes. The Celtics are obviously using the trade exception in this one. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Barnes, a defensive wing, and kind of play 4 as well. Kings are getting 2 first-round picks, maybe just 1, and Grant Williams, who I think can be a very valuable role player for a while. So that's a pretty decent return for them for Harrison Barnes. And then last but not least, the Timberwolves receive Otto Porter Jr. and the Bulls receive Ricky Rubio and Juan Hernangomez. So Otto is a very good 3-and-D player, and in my opinion, one of the better glue guys, one of the more underrated glue guys in the league. The issue with him is health. But if he can remain healthy, he can be a decent defensive player, a good 3-point shooter, and a guy who helps mold the team together, which is something the Timberwolves need rather desperately. And the Bulls get back Ricky Rubio, who is a playmaking point guard, and the Bulls desperately need playmaking. So I think this is a win-win for both sides. But yeah, those are my trades. I think these trades are better than my Eastern Conference ones. I think I tried a little too hard to do some crazy shit, and then I was just like, it's probably not that smart, but like, hey, it's different. But this one I played a little bit more conservative and did trades that are more simple for each team. So yeah, let me know what you think of these trades. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video. Again, go subscribe to my second channel if you are not already. But that is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.